you didn't know you needed. And yes, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all my dear listeners out there that have been listening to Buddy's show. How absolutely wonderful, driving in every Sunday listening to that. If we haven't met, I'm Rabia Carvalho, and this is that Gardening and Natural Living show you didn't know you needed. It's the show where everyone is an expert, but nobody has all the answers. And so together we grow and we keep on growing. And that's what we're doing today. Last week, we focused on the natural living side of things. And yet it kind of dovetailed into gardening because we were talking about soil and we had a specialist scientist on board. Today, we are going straight back into the thing that we all love and the reason why you all tune into this show, or one of, and that is gardening. Now, if you remember back to the time of our grandparents, I'm sure each of us remember them growing something. There was something growing, some tomato, or, if the grandparent was very adventurous, perhaps it would have been a cucumber, but there were many different things that our folks grew and our grandparents grew. And yet, time goes by and life just happens to us, right? Life happens. It is something that we don't expect. And we look back and we think, gosh, now we are that parent or that grandparent. And it is our duty, really, to preserve the knowledge of the older folks. And I can speak now as a little bit of an older folk myself and say, this is the place where we can learn to do those things. Now, it's been a while since we've revisited just the basics, just like, what do you do? Maybe you've got a black thumb and you've grown stuff and died, What do you do then? Well, that's okay. It's all right. We got you. And what if you just a lazy gardener? You're just too busy to be bothered. Too busy to be bothered. How are you going to grow anything then? You think, oh, no, I couldn't. I'm like, dude, pop a lettuce into a pot. Put it on the windowsill. Watch it grow and then eat it. Hello. So we've got our regular friend of the show, expert, and somebody that you all know, and I know that you all love her because we always have these beautiful shows when she's on with us. And that is, can you guess? Dum, da, da, dum, who is she? It is none other than Dr. Cary Goodwin. And Dr. Cary Goodwin is joining us live on live stream. So if you are with us on Facebook, Radio Al Ansar, or YouTube, Radio Al Ansar, or you have joined us on radio 90.4 FM, 105.6 FM, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and you have tuned in to Green Thumbs Up, then today we go back 2 days gone by with Dr. Cary Goodwin. Good morning, Cary. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very, very well. And yourself?
On thing. Let's give this a try again. Dr. Goodwin, there you are. Good morning.
Okay. Hello again.
Hello. Do you know, today while I speak with you, I have brother Asif Fili with me in studio. He's our sound engineer, and he's been teaching me how to use these little buttons and these little sliders and things. And hi, there you go. So it's awesome. It's quite a little learning curve for me. So if you see me rushing around to the side, pushing a button, you'll know why. And speaking of, everything gets easier when you know how.
Exactly. And I'm just so excited to be with you in studio.
So yes, you are.
This also worked. So it's obviously learning for everyone. Technology is becoming our friend.
Absolutely. Now, I've got these corny jokes all the time, hey? So whenever you join, you get one of them. And you know what? Where else are we going to do corn except on a gardening show, right?
True.
Yes. So why can't the flower ride his bike? That's your joke. Why can't the flower ride his bike?
Oh, no. Are you asking me? Hopefully you're asking the audience. Yes. I'm terrible at these corny jokes.
Oh, because he lost his pedals.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Oh, the dad jokes, the corn. I love it. I absolutely love it. A little bit of silliness for the kids out there in us. And speaking of the kids in us, you know, Carrie, how was it for you? Did your grandparents grow food and your parents grow food? Or was this something that you fell in love with?
Actually, I think it did start more with my gran, but she was a weeder. So they had a beautiful garden and we had a most magnificent avo tree. And so we used to get avos from them all the time. But she
Okay.
just used to love weeding. It was
Mm.
I think because the garden was so immaculate, it was her pastime, her piece in the garden. And so that to me was really, really special. And then the bug must have bitten for my mum and dad because my mum studied botany. And then, she started growing when I was born and they opened their first nursery. And then my dad saw how much my mum was loving it. And so he came into the business as well. And now it's a whole family affair. But
Yes.
as I said, it definitely came from the avo tree that my grandparents had I want to say not even their big home, in a small home on a relatively small property, but they
Yeah.
fed the neighborhood with avos. And
Isn't
so
that wonderful?
months now to think.
Isn't that wonderful? We really do learn from the people, in our lives, the people from the past. And as you speak, I remember myself, there was a time when we moved to Portugal for a stint, and what we had, my grandmother had a lemon tree. And I will never forget, I was 9 years old at the time, and my parents had bought this house that my grandmother was in, and we'd just gone to see the house. There was this lemon tree, which eventually became her lemon tree. Anyway, windows open, laying, having a siesta, and the smell of lemons flooding the room. And that's the most amazing experience for me. And so, yes, kids nowadays, with all of the technology, sometimes they miss out on it. We've got a message coming in from one of our listeners. So let's just take this message quickly, Carrie, before we continue. She says, Salams, Rabia, bubbly as ever, in that part of the year where Dania is in big demand. So we're talking coriander. How can we get quick results by planting coriander, Dania? The heat, does it allow good results? Please advise. So I'm going to throw that question right at you.
Okay.
Coriander.
Coriander is actually a fascinating crop because you would need to actually plant it every 3 months. So if you were
Mhm.
planting it from seed, you want to plant it 3 months, on day one, and then maybe a month later, so that you have a continuous crop and you don't harvest all of it. Let some of it go to flower so then it can self seed. But I think a
Mm.
lot of people think that they have black thumbs, as you mentioned earlier,
Yes.
because their coriander is not like other herbs and doesn't seem to last the whole season. It
Yeah.
is a quick growing crop. I think
Mm.
it loves the heat, so the heat is certainly not a problem. I think the
Okay.
rain, sometimes when we're having a lot of rain, it's like, oh, unless it
Mm.
has very good, well draining soil. So you mentioned soil last week, good soil so that the roots don't sit in water. It literally just wants to produce for you. It wants to give you those delicious leaves that you can use all the time. But it's saying at hey, just leave me a little bit of a time so I can get some flowers, seed again. And then
Yes.
I think the trick is to plant more continuously, not all the seeds at one time, and then you'll have
Mhm.
a long crop. But don't think
Mm.
your coriander, which you planted in September or August, is going to keep on going all the way up until May, June.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a continually planting crop.
Mm.
I hope that
And
helps.
speaking of, absolutely, you said something so important. You said it wants to do stuff, it wants to grow. And that's the thing, plants want to grow. So they're not fighting you. Gardening is easier when you realize they're not fighting you. Like,
And they're
no, I don't want
so
you. Leave me
resilient.
alone.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Oh,
They're
and
resilient.
yes. Now, coriander, there's a little secret to growing coriander that I discovered because my coriander years back, I'd throw the coriander seeds, throw the dania seeds into the ground, and they would do nothing because they'd rot. And then I discovered, put your coriander seeds on a chopping board. Take a rolling pin and gently roll it over till the seed cracks and then plant it. Hey presto, makes all of the difference.
So it could be the reason that you're doing that is to break the outer seed coat, which
Yes,
actually then
yes.
also speeds up the process. Because then the
Uh-huh.
little radical, the roots that are going to start growing from that seed, they're like, oh, this is so easy. Look, it's already broken for me. Let's go for it.
Yes,
So I love that
yes.
idea.
Yeah. And I've also discovered that you can grow coriander without soil. If you just take a colander, a kitchen colander, and you take some kitchen paper, towels, and lay it in the kitchen colander, then put your seeds on the board, crack them open, and lay those seeds on the paper. And then just keep that paper damp. They actually germinate and they grow almost like microgreens. So you can have your coriander in a colander, your dania in your colander, on your kitchen sink, on your kitchen windowsill where there's sun, and then as you're cutting, just you know put another colander out, and you can, when the one is dying, start growing the next, and you always have fresh dania at home because it is something that is widely used, especially here in Durban.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
it's important also because when you start bringing herbs into your home and growing them there, it's something that you could have, for us in Gauteng, we can't grow coriander in winter. It would die because of our cold.
Mhm.
So if we could bring
Yes.
it into the warmth of our kitchen in your colander, it's a bit of a tongue twister so early on the
Coriander in
Sunday
the
morning.
colander.
Yeah.
Coriander in the colander.
I did that with basil. So I grew, instead of having a cool drink in my glass, I grew some basil in my glass and I put it on my kitchen windowsill. And I do have it in my garden outside. But I like the fact that it was just there in my kitchen. I could break off a leaf. It's rooted beautifully in water, like you were
Mm,
saying with the lettuce, which would also root wonderfully in water. And I thought,
mhm.
oh, this adds a whole new concept to growing, is growing plants that grow on your kitchen windowsill with water rather than, as you said, with soil or like the
Mm.
coriander you mentioned, putting it in the paper.
Yeah, and that's so true. And it is part of showing children how things are grown. It is part of just starting a little gardening experience in your home. Growing things in water, I find, people sometimes bring home, not sometimes, we all bring home vegetables at some point in time in the week. And onions, for instance, onions can be really, really strong for kids as well as for older people. It can be just strong, it can kind of be hard on the digestion if people have acid reflux. And so, what I did when my folks were out here is I put the onion into a glass, the same as you would do with an avocado pip. Put
Yeah.
the onion into a glass with the toothpicks to hold it in place and let the water just touch the bum of the onion and it begins to shoot those green leaves. And now you have spring onions, which are
Nice.
much milder. It's not really a spring onion, but it's the same kind of flavor that you've got. It's milder. You can still use it in a salad. You can still use it for cooking, and it keeps on giving. And if you cut it, as you cut it, it grows. As long as you don't cut it too close to the onion surface, it keeps growing. So you can grow stuff in water. You can root stuff in water. If you bring home, like, what kind of things are your favorite to root in water, Carrie?
Oh, I'm trying because my friend, she manages to do it all the time in her house. Instead of having vases of flowers, she has vases of lavender that she's cut from her own garden and she's trying to root in water. And then she has pelargoniums that are all over the place that she's also rooting. And it looks like her house is filled with vases of flowers. And yet it's actually all these plants that she's trying to root in water. So I'm trying with a few more, slightly more difficult plants because I can't find the actual plant. So, when you were talking about learning from your grandparents right at the beginning of the show, it's these old plants that you see around, but they are so big, like
Mhm.
bohemia, which is that lovely indigenous plant with the orange flowers that I'm sure you've seen on all the pavements at the moment. I'm trying to reach one of those. I'm trying to reach the old, my mom said to me yesterday, it's called a bella perone, which is the shrimp plant. And
Okay.
it's because I can't find one. I can see them everywhere in people's gardens and they're beautiful big plants, but I can't get one to buy to put in my own garden. So I'm trying to root it in water in a vase. And actually, so sadly, the lady who helps me in the house, she saw these plants and the flowers were dying a little bit. And she went and threw it in the dustbin. I was like, no, no, no. I quickly had to go and rescue all my, say, cuttings because they don't always look good. I haven't got that where my, like my friends, they look beautiful, maybe because I'm not trying lavender and pelargoniums, but
Mm-hmm.
hers look beautiful. Mine look like I'm trying to grow plants I'm rescuing plants, but I still enjoy
Okay.
it. And if you have patience and keep the water clean, actually, I'm so
Yes.
excited when I see this little root growing, but it's taken maybe for those two plants because they're quite woody stems. It took
Mm-hmm.
about 6 weeks. Whereas my
Mm-hmm.
basil, when I tried it for the first time, it like rooted within 4 or 5 days. I'm like, whoa, I am a green fingered person. What a bonus.
You got green thumb.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
I have found that there are things that you can add to water to speed things up. Things like a little bit of honey, sometimes a little bit of coffee, actually, and sometimes a little bit of sugar. It actually helps those things to root faster, those little clippings. And I found also with my clippings, I don't know if you've discovered this, if you've got a little slip of lavender from someone, try to get it green, yes, but also try to get where there's like a V connection, a Y connection, shall we say. So there's a main stem and then there's one little going. But there's another message that has come in over here that I quickly want to read. A listener listening to us, and she says, Assalamu alaikum, I have successfully germinated my lychee seeds. So, wa alaikum salam. They are a month old in my pot, and there are a few of them in my pot. When do I transport them into single pots as I live in a flat? So she's growing
Wow,
lychees in a pot in a flat. Now, yes, you're going to
amazing.
need a big pot for your lychees because it's a
Yeah.
big tree. You need a big pot. But yeah, when would she transport them, in your opinion?
So, in a growing point of view, we normally say at a 4 leaf stage. So, when you've got 4 leaves coming from the stem, or if we work on 10 to 15 centimeters tall, then you would transport them. And I would almost say maybe not exactly into the final pot, but
Yes.
into, lychees, a nice taproot. So they want a tall, slim pot. So actually, it might be worth recycling a water bottle or
Mm,
upcycling one of those type of things and putting a few holes in it, obviously, so that there is drainage. And then you want to plant it into that. So maybe plant it into a few 1.5 liter or 2 liter water bottles first. And it's probably 25, 30 centimeters. Then you could go and plant it into your, say, final pot. But
mm.
just make sure
Yeah,
you use good potting soil or something like that when you're planting it out.
there you go. There you go. So you're going to pot it on. And for the listeners who are newbies and saying, what does she mean by a taproot? Think carrot. Think
Yes.
carrot. Some plants have this carrot and the roots come out from the sides, and other plants have, what are they, assiduous? What do they call them? When they're not
Um,
taproots, they are.
fibrous roots.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
And they extend outwards like furry hairs or mops. Okay, we've got another comment that came in from Sister Fatima Effendi says, my dad had a guava, lemon, grape trees, and of course his Christmas flowers. He loved gardening, a fig tree too, and my mom made fig jam. How wonderful is that? So let's go to where people are trying to get started. They know they have a black thumb, and they are lazy gardeners, perhaps. So, not a lot of time. It's not, oh, no, I need to start gardening, and that's going to be a disciplined thing, and I have to, discipline myself. What would you suggest?
I really think it all starts with good soil. So your speaker that you had last week, make sure you're using good compost if it's in your garden, good potting soil, and go and visit your local garden center or chat to. I love garden clubs. Garden a wealth
Hmm.
of information, and actually even to your grandparents because they will say to you, you know, this is what I started with your previous listener, like with the guava tree. We're not allowed to sell guava trees anymore because they're on the invasive species list. They
Oh,
are beautiful. Yeah. So you have to almost grow them in your own garden or get them from a friend. But it's I think it's speaking to people. Gardening is all about sharing. And so if you
yes.
start with the good roots, a good foundation, as I say, a good healthy soil, and then at school we all learn to plant beans. But actually beans are quite hard to get to grow. And I love growing the microgreens that you spoke about earlier. because for anybody that gives quick results. You plant those seeds, whether you're sprinkling them in soil, whether you're sprinkling them onto some paper towel, they grow within 4 days. So it gives you that wonderful idea that I've got it. I've got green thumbs. And I was speaking at a garden club last week, and I was saying, sometimes when you give people a present, you give them something that might be a little bit hard, maybe like an orchid. An orchid is probably not the easiest plant to grow. So try and when you're giving presents as plants or ideas, even lemon trees. Lemon trees are lovely. A lot of people give them as their first, housewarming gift and that sort of thing. But some lemon trees are quite susceptible to fungus and disease, and especially if you don't feed it. And then people think, oh no, my lemon tree is not doing really well. But, go and then speak to, as I say, the elders, because they know, or your local garden center, and get help. But also, I think when you sharing your information about plants, I had one friend, and she always used to give a hebe as a gift. It's very hardy. It's got beautiful soft flowers, attracts a lot of pollinators to your garden, but it is super hard to kill. So when she was giving it as a gift or something like that, it meant that people would have success. And I think that's what, when you're successful with something, you think, oh, I can conquer the world. I can grow anything. And I think that's what we want to try and encourage when we're starting off, is don't start off with a hard plant. Start off with your basil and your veggies. Veggies grow so well. Your spinaches, your tomatoes. Your tomatoes grow in compost heaps. And when you have your first tomato that you've tasted from your own garden, it just tastes super sweet and almost sun-kissed. And you're like, oh, why didn't I do this earlier?
And you realize that your shop bought tomatoes taste like water or nothing.
Exactly. So start off with easier plants. I always find that trying to grow, because I don't have patience, growing my broccoli and my cabbages. Oh my goodness gracious, they take so long, and I'm trying to turn them into decorations now, so I don't, go and check on them all the time, because they just don't come right straight away. So I like the faster growing crops, which make my pots look amazing. My mints, as we spoke about earlier, the coriander, that just keeps coming up and giving me endless joy with very little effort.
Mint can actually be a bit of a nightmare because it just grows everywhere. It spreads everywhere. Sometimes it feels a bit like a verbena that just won't go away because it just really does spread. But these 2-week plants, 2 weeks to harvest, lettuce. 2 weeks, you've got lettuce that you can actually make a little bit of a salad. And you don't need to. The other thing is, folks, if you're growing lettuce and you've decided that that's what you want to start with, because that's like dead easy, don't yank the whole thing out of the plant. Just cut off some of the outer leaves and keep using that plant. One of our listeners says, I am rooting a pineapple. Now, I've got quite a few pineapple plants. They are dead easy to grow, but they are slow. And at the moment, I have 3 pineapples actually growing full. And it takes about 5 years for the sister that is rooting a pineapple. It takes about 5 years for that pineapple plant to bear fruit. But it's so easy. You get a pineapple from the shop, grab that crown at the base, twist and pull, and then just remove those lower leaves by pulling them down. And you'll see little bumps. So leave a space about 4 or 5 centimeters if it's big enough, that crown, and then put it into that glass of water sitting on the windowsill. I'll have them in water like that for months on end until those roots are nice and big, and then stick them outside, throw them in a pot, and they grow. And something I'd read about pineapples was that you can grow a pineapple and then it's only going to bear fruit once and that's it. And I thought, no, that's not what happens with mine. Mine basically, we every year we're getting fruit. But let's get back to our ad break. We have a little ad break at the moment, and we'll be right back after this. So don't go away. You're with Green Thumbs Up, and we're talking back to gardening.
Radio Al-Ansar, Durban, 90.4 FM. Peter Maritzburg, 105.6 FM.
Vodacom Shop,
For smartphones, laptops, routers, asset insurance, gaming, IoT, payment platforms, and the latest gadgets to always keeping you in the forefront of innovation and technology. Home and business internet to ensure that you have the best connection. Plug and play home internet to fully installed fiber. Our infrastructure provides a resilient platform for your critical business applications, which will help your business perform best. Vodacom shop at the Pavilion Superstore 2.0, Westwood Mall, The Bluff, The Workshop Durban, Umlazi Mega City, Bridge City Kwamashu, Brookside Mall PMB, and the Nelson Mandela Square Stanton 2.0.
Is your car in need of repairs or some TLC?
At Sham Panel Beaters, we take pride in providing top-notch service for over 40 years.
Conveniently located at 140 Felix Lamini Road, Overport, Durban, we specialize in repairs for both insurance claims and cash jobs.
Enjoy a free diagnostic test, polish, mini valet with every guaranteed repair.
We treat your pride and joy as our own and are approved by all major insurance companies and brokers.
Sham Panel Beaters is also an AA and RMI accredited repairer.
Trust us with your vehicle today.
It's official. Checkers Foods Kawi Park is our first food store with a halal butchery, bakery and deli certified by NIHT, the National Independent Halal Trust. This will ensure high standards and ethical practices across our butchery, bakery and deli from farm to table. So visit Checkers Foods Kawi Park for an exceptional shopping experience that keeps getting better and better.
Radio Al-Ansar.
Look at the sun, look at the sky, look at the bird, it's flying so high. Look at the stars, shining so bright in the middle of the night.
And we're back with Green Thumbs Up. Yes, Green Thumbs Up, that gardening and natural living show you didn't know you needed. I am Rabia Carvalho and I am speaking to Dr. Cary Grant, who is our gardening expert and a regular on Green Thumbs Up. And we are talking about back to gardening, and that is essentially if you were to start from scratch, what do you do? Now, Dr. Cary, you'd mentioned, Dr. Cary. I always call you Dr. Cary, I know, and you always say, so we're talking about if you were to start over, you mentioned the importance of soil, having good potting soil, having good compost, kind of people may say, and they do say to me on gardening groups often, but how do I mix it together? Is it like a whole lot of compost and a little bit of soil? Do I put potting soil and then you sprinkle some compost on top? Give us your best tips for that.
Okay, so for me, when I started my garden from scratch, because it was a lot of soil and rocks and clay, and I started making my flower beds, I actually went and dug down, well, with help, because it was very heavy, and a lot of hard work. I dug down at least 60 centimeters, and I took all that soil and I put it onto my grass. So I had these lovely flower beds or lovely trenches, and then I started filling them with organic matter. So I searched the neighborhood for old twigs and branches and all sorts of things that would eventually break down, but they would give my soil and my compost a lot of aeration. They would provide breathing holes for the earthworms to come and see. They would provide, because they'd been chopped down, they would provide bacteria and space for fungus to grow. So I put like at least maybe a 10 centimeter layer of all these broken sticks and branches. Then I started putting some leaves. Some people like to put newspaper. I'm not a really big fan of newspaper. I like to use more organic matter. So I put a lot more. At the time we had a lot of organic waste, like foliage. I think it was autumn. So I did collect from the neighborhood. I hated seeing all those bags of leaves that people put in. Don't put your leaves into bags. It's like pure gold that you're just throwing away. So I collected all of that and I filled it up. And so I had a really good base of stuff that would eventually break down. I do use my organic waste from my kitchen. So I had quite a lot of bokashi and pips and peels and all sorts of things. And I put that down at least the bottom 20 centimeters, where all the stuff that I found around the neighborhood that was living and now is not living anymore. So all organic waste. Then I started mixing my compost. So I mix 1 bag of compost with 1 bag of soil equivalents. And then I started putting that into my holes. And then I do like adding. So I added some like organic rock dust because I don't think our soil has a lot of trace elements in it anymore. I added some fertilizers that you find at your local garden centers, just so that the soil, because compost is just organic matter, but it might miss the essential nutrients that your plants
Yes.
need to thrive. So as I say, I did go and add, whether it be bone meal or superphosphate, or there's a lovely one now that's called BioRock. I added some of that in just to make my soil healthy from the start. And then I filled it all the way up. And I always think my poor neighbors, because I often had to do it at night, I think they thought I was burying bodies in my garden, because I was out there with my torch, digging the soil and mixing in the compost. I could never do it during the day because that's when I'm working. And I, you used to look over the wall and I'd be like, no, don't worry, I'm just creating a garden. And then about 3 months later, when I had planted everything, he would look over the wall and he's like, oh, wow, your garden is beautiful. And it was because I spent probably the first 2 or 3 weeks just preparing the soil. So that's if you were doing it in a garden bed. With a potting soil, like pots today, actually our potting soil is so magnificent. The ones that you find in most of your, as I say, garden centers, it's got coir fibers in to help hold on to water. It's got little water-saving granules. It's sifted a little bit, so it makes it easy. So, for a pot, I actually just take potting soil. Maybe if it's a plant that needs good drainage, I would put a bit of layer of stones at the bottom of my pot. But otherwise, then I plant directly into potting soil, and it works magnificently for me. So those are the two things. But it's really good to, as I say, start with a really good foundation.
Yes. And if you do have a little bit more space, maybe you've got, 1 by 1, even 1 meter by 1 meter, get yourself a little bag. I find to get a bag, one of these old, bags that the potatoes come in, the woven bags essentially. And into that, you can have some potting soil, you can put a little bit of compost, but then throw in those eggshells, throw in those grounds, not necessarily all of the kitchen waste, because we're not making compost, but we're making a very, very rich soil. So, if you've got chickens, take a little bit of that, not too much because it can burn plants, but take some of that and throw that in that bag and keep that bag as just an ongoing nutrient powerhouse that you can throw. But now we've received a little poem, don't you know?
Nice. I like it.
And I thought I'd read it to us all because it's actually really pretty, and it's called The Gardener by Uli K. And so it says, so I shall bloom then, even with these grieving hands, my heart half full and half empty, carried by the wind, warmed by the sun, drenched in rain, buried in soil, broken in my waiting, trampled underfoot, storm on the horizon, and yet here I am still standing, and not because I am brave, not because I am strong, not because of anything that I have done. I am small against these breezes after all. My fragile petals would not stand a chance, but I was planted here to grow. And when the gardener comes along, I want to say with a happy heart, I bloomed because you loved me. How beautiful is that?
Amazing.
I bloomed because you loved me, and that's what it is. They want to grow for us.
Yeah, I think at this garden club talk, I said to the people there, I said, why do you love gardening? And they said, gardening, one of the answers was, because it's a surprise. Because you don't always know what's going to happen. You don't know if that coriander seed is going to germinate. You're not sure if you've planted that bulb and you've forgotten about it 6 months later, and then you go outside and it's this beautiful surprise. Because, as the poem said, you loved them. You gave them the tender, loving care. You gave them maybe the right soil and a bit of the right conditions, and they just bloomed magnificently. I mean, I love it.
Just before we started the show, I had a few minutes with our previous host of the previous show, the breakfast show, and Buddy Govind and I were saying how he was saying that talking to the plants is a lovely thing, to be able to talk to plants and to be able to just experience them. And it is so true. It's that moment of mindfulness. Our mind is racing with everything, and our brain cannot do more than one thing. As much as we multitask, in terms of focus. So when you are looking at that plant, you're practicing a space of mindful living. You're experiencing that. And if you're speaking to the plant, I read somewhere that the reason they love it is not just because of the energy of loving and that they receive, but also because of the carbon dioxide that comes out of our mouth. And they love that because they breathe that all day.
Like that too.
That's the practical reason. So gardening and exercise in surprise and exercise in faith. I read a while ago, somebody said it was one of these Chinese philosophers who said that gardening is the expression of faith, because you don't know if it's going to live or grow or die. So we have a message that has come in here. My lemon tree has fungus now. I do spray it with vinegar water. I wouldn't suggest that, but she says I do spray it with vinegar water, but not working. Can you help? So first, let's say stop the vinegar water, because the vinegar kills plants.
Yes, yeah. Don't use the vinegar water. So the reason that the lemon trees would start having a fungus now, it's called woolly. It actually starts off with woolly aphids. So normally, if you looked on your lemon tree, you would probably see a few ants crawling up and down the stem. And if you looked on the underside of the leaves and you felt it, they would feel a little bit sticky. And so these aphids, especially now when it's starting to flower and there's lots of fresh shoots on your lemon tree, the aphids are like, this is a lovely place for me to be. And they secrete a honeydew substance, which then attracts the fungus, which is the sooty mold that comes from, and as I said, normally sits on the underside of the leaves. So we would treat for aphids rather than for fungus, because if you can get rid of the aphids, then the mold or the fungus will actually disappear. So I like using, we use in the garden center, we use more commercial products, but like a Ludwig's insect spray or a BioNeem, those type of products. And you just spray your lemon tree with that. They're non-toxic, they're organic. Obviously, they will kill the aphids. And that would work really, really nicely to try and get rid of them. And then your lemon tree, and then always feed your lemon tree. I'm a big believer in, if you have a healthy plant, the disease, whether it be insect or fungus, would be less. The plant is resilient to fight against it.
That's great advice. Thank you for that. Absolutely. I want to also give you and this listener a recipe that is completely inexpensive compared to something like BioNeem, which can be expensive, and it works absolutely just as well. And that's 2 tablespoons of neem oil. You want 2 tablespoons of neem oil. You want 2 tablespoons of dishwash liquid, a good strong one like your MAC or your Sunlight. And then you want 2 liters of water. Throw those all together and give it a good shake. But now the trick is put the bottle down after shaking it and look at it. It should be a see-through bottle so that you can count to 10. 1, 2, 3. And as you're counting, if you see the oil rising to the surface, depending on the dishwash liquid that you've used, you may need another tablespoon of dishwash liquid. If you've counted to 10 and there's no oil on the surface, you're good to go. You can keep that in your garden, in your shed, wherever. You could make it and sell it if you wanted to. And it's a wonderful fungicide, insecticide. And instead of vinegar water, if you're wanting to address the fungus itself, what I find works is to take 3% peroxide and mix your 3% peroxide with water 1:1 rather than vinegar. Vinegar, you would throw, for instance, vinegar or vinegar water onto weeds in the driveway and that'll kill them. So that's what it's going to do to your plants as well. So Dr. Cary Goodwin has been with us today. And Cary, I cannot believe the time has flown. And we must continue. It always does. Time flies when you're having fun. Good friends on the show. And so thank you so much for being with us today. And we will speak with you again very, very soon, I am sure. Dr. Cary Goodwin is with us, folks, approximately every 6 weeks. So if you're picking up a cycle, that's the cycle that we have her on here. So thank you so very much for giving us your time and your advice and your experience and your knowledge. Always wonderful, wonderful having you with us. Thank you. And we'll see you again. So, folks, that is Dr. Cary Goodwin with us this morning. on the show. And we mentioned earlier, we actually mentioned coriander. Okay. And so for Nature's Apothecary, I want to say the coriander is one of those things that are fantastic for your skin. Did you know that coriander works fantastic for your skin? Yes, the seeds of the coriander. So with me in studio, who's just walked in, folks. Who is it? Who can it be? It's Sister Salma KW. Sister Salma Kazi Wahab is preparing for her Sunday lounge. So, Salma, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. How are you, Rabia?
Alhamdulillah. Good morning. How are you doing?
Very well, very well. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Beautiful weather.
Beautiful weather. Now, dear listener, Sister Salma sent me some beautiful pictures of her garden that's coming along so well. And you're doing so well with those plants.
It's trial and error. It seems to be.
Yes, it's exactly it. It's trial and error. And did you know, I was just saying about coriander, so it's great for the skin. It's an anti-aging thing. So if you were to take those coriander seeds and gently crush them, put them into a cup of boiling water, 1 teaspoon of your coriander seeds that you've cut up or broken up, put it into a cup of boiling water, let it stand for 5 to 10 minutes, and now you've got a toner that you can use on your skin to get rid of pigmentation.
With coriander, though, I must ask, when you get them at the stores, so you can't replant those roots now, right?
You can.
You can?
You can.
And then is it such a thing where they said you have to take it out and then you have to replant them again as seeds, or do they keep growing? How does that work?
Well, we were saying earlier in the show with coriander, you should plant every 3 months, yes, because it doesn't last forever, coriander. But what you could do is get it from the store, and then put that into water. Because you got the roots, put them into water. If you get them in a pot, put them straight into the ground. If they've got water, then if they are just in a packet, put them into water just to kind of wake up those roots a little bit. You can add 1 or 2 little drops of honey in there just to liven it up, and then put it into the ground. And what then happens is eventually it's going to flower. So as it starts to bolt and it starts to flower, plant your next coriander. So you've consistently got it going. Let it flower so that some of those seeds will fall into the ground and then just regrow themselves.
I love that, because coriander is something we use all the time,
Yes.
especially now Ramadan.
Absolutely. So just got a couple of messages. One that came in. Salams, hope you're well, Sister Rabia. I have meti seed. Please help me. How can I plant? And I am in a flat.
That's another one.
Exactly.
Highly sought after.
Highly sought after. So the same thing. You can put it into a cotton wool with water if you wanted to, and then cover it up until it shoots a little root. You can do that with pretty much anything, a bean, with meti seeds, with all sorts of plants, all sorts of seeds, or you could put it directly into the soil. But meti seeds want a little bit of heat in order to germinate.
As if those really hard seeds.
Those really hard seeds.
Okay.
But they want to grow for us. So soak them for a little while, a few days, and then put them into the soil, or soak them until you see that little root and then put them into the soil. And one last question I'll take here. Assalamu alaikum. Walaikum salam, Maf, Sister Rabia. Excellent show. Maf missed the recipe for the aphids. Please share. They were all over my curry leaves. Tried sunlight liquid in water, but it didn't work. Well, if you're doing sunlight liquid in water, it's you need to do it every single day or every 2 days, because these aphids are resistant. Otherwise, it's 2 tablespoons of your dishwash liquid, 2 tablespoons of your neem oil, and 2 liters of water. Put it into a see-through container or jug or bottle. Give it a good shake, and then count slowly to 10. If you're counting to 10, not like 1, 2, but count 1, 2, 3. If you're counting to 10 and you see that oil rise to the surface, you know you need another tablespoon of that dishwash liquid, and that will help to emulsify it. Keep it, store it, use it, spray it, and also spray regularly. If you've got a massive infestation, you need to spray every 2 to 3 days. Don't think you're going to spray once and then it's done. If you're using chemicals, you might get away with that, but otherwise you've got to do it regularly.
That's so risky, though, because I remember when I had, what was it? I think it was not hydrangeas. It was hibiscus.
Yes.
I had a beautiful red hibiscus plant, so gorgeous, in front of my daughter's window, and I loved it and I used to admire it until I started noticing these white little thingies crawling over it. But it was everywhere. So I eventually just cut the whole thing out because it was all over the branches, every leaf. And I was scared because it's right next to my bougainvillea. And I said, It's going to just now hop over there. And before that happens, and I just yank the whole thing out.
And you have a beautiful bougainvillea. But you see, when you're spraying with sunlight or with any other dishwash liquid, when you're spraying with it, it takes longer to cover the respiratory system of the bug. Whereas if you're using, you're adding the oil that coats them.
Okay.
So you're going to find quite a quick death. And if there are so many like that, take a pressure hose and wash them right off.
Yeah.
But now, we've got the Sunday Lounge coming up on a completely different topic. What's happening on the Sunday Lounge? What do we have?
No, now we're officially 2 weeks away from Ramadan.
Yes.
So I always mention that the Nasheed artists come out of their caves and nooks and crannies now. So they are pulling out new releases like you can't imagine.
Really?
We also just came out of the 15th of Shaban now as well. So there's some beautiful releases that have come out now onto the scene. So I'm excited to introduce to the listeners that Umar Isa has also now come out again. They all come alive now, Ramadan time. They want to inspire. They want to now invoke that emotion, prepare yourself spiritually for the month. So I love what they're producing now and I'm excited. We'll do a full top 10 today.
Absolutely. So today is our top 10 for nasheeds in preparation for Ramadan. And maybe, here's a thought. Maybe you could prepare like a little list of nasheeds for folks that we could put on our social media to inspire them in Ramadan.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
And we could kind of start listening to that before even Ramadan comes along.
No, it definitely can psych you because if you see all the songs that they're coming with, even local artists.
Really?
In Cape Town, they just had a wonderful event that's taking place this weekend. So they've introduced a number of local groups as well as some more seasoned groups. Cape Town's so fortunate in that way. They've got a lot of talent, and as far as their groups are concerned, Durban, not quite so much just yet, but we're getting there, hopefully. Brother Aswad knows it's a struggle here in Durban.
Yes.
But we are an Urdu-speaking community. So you find a lot of Urdu reciters in Durban. But with nasheeds and things, you find Cape Town has a greater appreciation for that. So they had a huge event this weekend and a bunch of new artists on the scene. So I'm going to talk a bit about that as well.
Oh, that sounds very exciting. So folks, don't miss the Sunday Lounge. It's coming up right after this. And that brings me to a close with green thumbs up. It's been wonderful spending this time with you. Absolutely love talking to you about gardening and natural living. And I will see you again next week. Until next week, please do remember, today, and in fact every day, is a beautiful, beautiful day to be happy. So until I see you next week, I will leave you in the loving and wonderful hands of our sister Salma Kazi Wahab. And from me until next week, from Brother Asfar Fili and the team at Radio Al Ansar, I say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Look at the stars shining so bright in the middle of the night. Oh, look, there's a shooting star. Do you ever wonder who created this and who created that? Allah created everything. What about that tree, so beautiful and green? Can you see the wind pushing those leaves? Look at that fish swimming away.